Okay, so today we're matching up two bots. We have the green spawn, he's led out already with his queen's pawn, and he's going up against Nelson. Nelson is a 1300 bot, but he has an early and aggressive attack with his queen, so we can expect his queen to come out soon. I'm going to pawn take in the middle, and there she is. Nelson brings out his queen early.
Also, some video guys said Nelson is the worst intermediate boss.
It might be the worst one. Yeah, I usually don't do very well against him though, so that's why I'm interested in seeing how he does against the green spawn. And also because it's nearly the end of the month and green spawn's going to be replaced soon with who knows what. I'm guessing it might be some World Cup. So we have the queen come over. Nelson's gonna do a queen swap already. So that's Nelson's favorite piece and he's already swapped it. So maybe he is the worst spot.
Also like to swap with queen too.
Okay, and then green spawn comes out with his knight. So Nelson just went to his fallback. Second favorite piece, the bishop, which is now gone. So all early attacks from Nelson. Here comes his pawn out to defend himself or attack this approaching pawn. A pawn stack on. Oops. The back one. I did this wrong. Okay, so pawn stack from green spawn. Then we get the Nelson's knight out in front of his king. Just using a little bit of sense here. Green spawn's bishop comes out. Nelson moves his knight over to attack it, which is fair enough. Green spawn moves in closer instead of backing up. Then Nelson takes his open square at g4, attacking the f3 knight. F3 knight goes to the edge of the board, not the best place. Another pawn move from Nelson. Green spawn is going to respond with an attack on this pawn, capture. Nelson's going to take his knight on h4 knight, gone. Green spawn recaptures. Green spawn's ahead on 2 on material. Then we get, instead of attacking the bishop, Nelson goes up 2. Odd. Then we get an attack on the same bishop that he's protecting, so that makes sense. He wanted to leave his bishop there. More pawn action. Now we're attacking the white bishop. So green spawn's bishop's in trouble, but we get Nelson's bishop taken out first. So it looks like it's going to be a bishop swap. And there we go. Swapped up bishops. Now they have pawns facing off. We'll see what they do to each other. Green spawn takes again. It's getting very close to the finish line for a promotion. Nelson moves out of the way so he can take that pawn. The bishop comes in green spawn to protect that square. Okay. Nelson's opening up the lane so his other bishop, so his other rook can come in and join the fight. Green spawn bringing his knights out, so it's getting pretty tense. Moving the king into attack. So this C7 and C8 is getting a lot of attention right now. Green spawn brings over his A rook to the D file to put Nelson in check. So long as Nelson queen. Oh, he takes. There we go. Nelson's king took the pawn. Problem resolved. But green spawn moves his rook up to the fourth row. Not done yet. Nelson brings his rook up to the sixth row. And then we get our pawn take and attack on the rook. Rook moves in its face. Another pawn attack and pawn capture. The rook's still in trouble. Okay, Nelson brings his second rook into play. So he's gonna sacrifice his rook? Green spawn moves his rook forward one. Now the action is on the pawns. Nelson attacks this guy. Green spawn lines up his rook cannon. Nice. Nelson takes. Green spawn takes with the pawn. Logically, Nelson's not doing well. Maybe he's the worst spot. He comes up with his knight to attack the A6 bishop. A6 bishop backs up. Then more pawn action, because now the square is protected. Bishop backs up some more, but also in Nelson's line of fire. Nelson brings his king up one. It looks like he's going after this next pawn. Okay. Green spawn brings his bishop to G6. Nelson responds by moving his rook across the board. Pawn move from green spawn. So we have Nelson going up to A4. Green spawn went up to C4. Get out of this rook's way. Or knight's way. So then he puts his knight between those two and attacks their king. King moves in to attack him. Counterattack. Wow. Okay, so Nelson took his rook. So it's looking pretty evenly matched now. Materials even. Green spawn went up by 2. So that was a good trade for Nelson. He got a rook for his knight. Then we have this pawn capture on H6. Recapture. Looks like green spawn is getting closer to a promotion. So Nelson brings his rook over. Green spawn's undeterred by that. And so Nelson brings his king up. Green's pawn brings his king out in opposition. Nelson puts his pawn up. Nelson's much worse off for pawns. So now he's down to one pawn left. And he's not a passed pawn, he's still got two opponents on him. What happened over here? Oh, the bishop came back to line up on this remaining pawn. Nelson moves over to this file, the D file. There goes the pawn. Nelson's not doing well. It's down to his last rook. But honestly, Green's pawn's not that far ahead of him right now. And then he lines up on this pawn again. Green's pawn's got to protect his pawn. This is his closest one to promotion. But he does have a few more chances. Nelson takes, and then I'm sure Nelson's going to be taken out here, which he is. Nelson's left with his king. Green's pawn's left with 5 pawns. Nelson moves up a rank instead of back, and then he's chasing this pawn. Another pawn racing for promotion. Okay, Nelson goes for C5. Green's pawn continues forward. Nelson backs up, back to D4. So I'm guessing it's going to be over pretty soon for Nelson. Green's pawn now has a queen. Nelson goes to C5. See how quickly Green's pawn can end this. So going for another pawn promotion. Nelson went to B5. Now the queen's finally coming into play. She goes up to C7. Pinning him in, and then Nelson goes to A4. Check from Green's pawn. Back a square from Nelson. Another pawn move from Green's pawn. Nelson moves in toward the center of the board. Probably a smart move. But Green's pawn cuts him off. Has a protected square. Moves Nelson back to D5. So he is in the center of the board now. Queen comes up one. To B6. Nelson moves over one. Now he's in opposition to their king again. King comes up one. Nelson goes back one. We have a pawn attack from Green's pawn. So Nelson's just going back and forth. Maybe he's going for a draw, but too late. Green's pawn's got a checkmate. That's it. Green's pawn takes him just about every time. This is the third game I've played against I've played these two against each other, and this is the third time Green's pawn has won a full game. Thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe.